Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Discriminating Gamer. You know, my art book is missing the last page. I guess I'll just have to draw my own conclusion. Ladies and gentlemen, today we're going to go ahead and take a look at Diplomacy from Renegade Game Studios.
We'll get back to the review in just a moment. I want to take a minute to ask you to check out my other channel, that is Cody Carlson, PhD, where we talk about history, books on history, military history. I even post some of my lectures for my classes on there. Please check that out. Please subscribe to that channel. And now, back to the review.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, Diplomacy. Where to begin? Where to begin? This is a game I have talked about on the channel for years, but I've never done a video review of the game Diplomacy. And that's largely because I haven't played the game in a long, long time. Recently, of course, the game Diplomacy was acquired by Renegade Game Studios, and they sent me a copy. I asked them to because I recently ran a game with some of my Western Civ students of Diplomacy. I had an extra credit night, and I was going to do it. I was actually going to use, I had an older version of it that's kind of beat up that we used to play all the time. I was going to use that, but I actually thought, oh, this will be a good opportunity. So I reached out to Renegade to see if they'd be willing to send me a copy that I could use, a nicer copy that I could use with my students. And I thought, you know what? And I'll just go ahead, since I've never reviewed this game, I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to review Diplomacy. So let's go ahead. I will tell you basically how the game plays, then I'll give you my thoughts. Diplomacy takes place in the pre-World War I European world. Essentially, you have 7 nations who are all seeking advantage over their neighbors. You have Britain, France, Germany, Italy, Austria-Hungary, Russia, and the Ottoman Empire. And each one of them is going to begin the game with a number of supply centers. Now, each of them have 3 supply centers, except for Russia, which, because it's so big, begins the game with 4 supply centers. Each of these supply centers corresponds to a military unit. Now, there are only 2 kinds of military units in this game. There are armies and there are navies. Armies can only go on land spaces on the board, although they can be convoyed through navies to other land spaces. And navies can actually go in the water, but they can also occupy coastal land spaces as well. Now, the first turn of the game is spring 1901. Now, essentially, how the game works is everybody looks at the board. They see maybe what supply centers they want to go to, because there are many supply centers on the board that do not begin controlled by these major players. For instance, Denmark, Norway, Sweden, Serbia, Tunis, Spain, Portugal. There's a bunch of supply centers on the game board that are not occupied by anyone else. So what people are going to do is they're going to be looking at the supply centers they want to go to. They're going to then break into groups. They're going to meet with the different leaders of the different nations. And they're going to say, well, let's horse trade. Why don't you take those 2? I'll take these 2, etc., etc. You work it out. Everything's all nice and happy. But within a couple of turns, of course, those unoccupied ones are going to be gobbled up. So what you do is, after you meet in your groups and make your decisions, you're going to return to the table and write your orders. Now, your orders must be written in a very specific way. For instance, if you have an army in Berlin, you want to move it into Warsaw, you would write army, the German player would write Army Berlin, to Warsaw, or arrow to Warsaw, whatever. For instance, you can also just hold, not do anything, or you can also support a unit. You could write, Army Berlin, support Army Munich into, a space they're both adjacent to. So there's different orders you can write. You can write fleets. Fleet. You would write an army moving from, say, I don't know, Denmark to Norway, but then you'd have to have a fleet there that would write, fleet, whatever sea that is, convoy, German army, Denmark to Norway. You have to specify the nationality if it's a different nationality than yours. Now, the combat essentially works if one unit is going into space occupied by another unit that is holding, it's just one on one. They can't push it. But if that unit attacking has support from another unit, it's two on one, and that unit can move into that space. And then that person who is retreating has to write down where they're going to retreat to. Retreat orders are revealed. But essentially, that's what it is. Each army and navy has a strength of one, so that's why you need the alliances to give you advantages when attacking your enemies to get into those supply centers. So you have to write these orders very very correctly, otherwise that unit will just hold, nothing will happen. But you can support units in attacking, you can support units who are defending, and you can support, as I say, other nationalities units as well. Now this is important because very quickly, as those other independent supply centers get gobbled up, then you're going to find yourself in conflict with people, and you will say to people, will you support my army into here? And they will support you, but then you start to get kind of factions lined up, but then it may not be in someone's interest to continue with an alliance, so they will backstab. They'll promise you something but then attack you in the hopes of enriching themselves. Now, you do this the first round. The second round, when you do it at the end of it, this is the fall round. At the end of every fall round, what you do is you add up the number of supply centers you control, and then you add or subtract to the numbers of armies or navies you've got on the board. So if you had 4 military units, but you have 6 supply centers, you would gain 2 supply centers, or you'd gain 2 military units. If you had 7 military units on the board, but you only have 5 supply centers, you're going to lose 2 of your military units. And in this way, as you get bigger and stronger, you're going to become more military powerful, but you might also invite a coalition to begin working against you. Now, traditionally, in a full game, you would go until someone claims 18 supply centers. That rarely happens, however, and very often people will concede earlier than that. And critically, in this edition from Renegade, it actually says you can agree to play for a set time limit. You can play to the time limit. At the end of that time limit, who's ever got the most supply centers wins the game. So each turn, players are meeting in private. They are discussing their issues. They are then coming back, writing their orders. They're revealing their orders. They're stabbing each other in the back. They're helping each other. They're trying to get into supply centers. They're gaining and losing armies every fall turn. Now, at the end of that time limit that you're playing to, or if you want to go to the full 18, whoever has the most supply centers wins. Diplomacy. Diplomacy was created initially in 1959. It was Henry Kissinger and John F. Kennedy's favorite board game. That alone right there is pretty cool. Now, as I mentioned, I played this game for years. When I was in my early 20s, this was kind of the game that, like, every Sunday night, my friends and I would get together and play, and we would just have a blast. And I seriously could probably take an hour or more in this video just talking about you with some of the incredibly fun experiences I've had playing Diplomacy. I'll just mention the one, which I've mentioned many times. I'm sure many of you are sick of hearing about it. But I was playing a game where I was France, and I was winning every game we were playing. Every game, I'd been winning consistently every game we've been playing. And I was playing as France, and my 3 friends, Stan, Zach, and Sean, decided they were going to gang up on me and make sure that I didn't win. Zach and Sean, of course, brothers, good friends of the channel here. And what happened was I heard some rumblings from France, from Russia and Turkey, who had been kind of marginalized early in the game and kind of felt like they no longer really had a dog in the fight. Stan, Sean, and Zach represented Britain was Sean, Stan was Germany, Zach was Austria-Hungary, and I was France. And as France, I controlled France, the Iberian Peninsula, the Low Countries, and Italy. I was clearly winning. So I was able to deduce the exact turn they were coming on me. I remember I was writing my orders and then thinking, no, wait, they're going to attack me this turn. I hurried, I rewrote my orders, and literally I held them off. I countered every attack they made, and I was able to do that for 3 full game turns. They wouldn't talk to me. They'd go and they'd plan their strategy, and for 3 turns, they couldn't make any headway. But eventually, their greater numbers began to tell, and they started moving in on me. I realized I couldn't win. They were too determined, but I could split the coalition, and I could essentially be kingmaker. So I turned to Zach, who was Austria, and I said, Zach, I will give you Italy. You will win the game. Just, but make sure we used to do a thing where we'd sign treaties, and like whoever was allied to the winner would get to be on the treaty as part of the victorious team. I said, just make sure I'm on the treaty with you. He said, okay. So he went ahead. He conquered Italy, and he took over Italy. I pulled out. He took over Italy, and he won the game. And his brother Sean was so angry at him that night as they were driving home together. Sean started hitting him. They got to a fist fight while they were driving, and it was the worst fight they've ever had over this game of diplomacy. Right? This game. That's why it's called the Friend Killer. So it had been years since I'd played a game of diplomacy, and then the other day, as I say, I had my students actually play a game of this, and it was really fun watching as they discovered this game and realized just how dirty it could be, and just how involved they began. I offered what I did was I actually said I gave them certain objectives, like if they were a certain country, they'd take certain objective cities, and the more they took, the more extra credit they were going to get, and of course. There was some pretty brutal, some pretty nasty backstabbing that went on in that game. And it was hilarious. And they all had a great time, even the ones that didn't do so well. They all told me how much fun they had. So this might be a regular thing. I might be having diplomacy games for my students going forward forever. Anyway, long story short, too late. I love diplomacy. I think it is a fantastic game. I actually probably want to get together a game with just some friends some night and do it. I'll have to work that out because I do love diplomacy so much. It is such a good game. It is such a simple game, and what can I say? It's one of my favorite games of all time. So the recommendation for the discriminating gamer for diplomacy is buy it. Well, thank you once again for joining us on The Discriminating Gamer. As always, we ask you to please leave a comment for us on YouTube, on Board Game Geek, on our Facebook page, or on thediscriminatinggamer.com. We'd ask you to please like us on Facebook, subscribe to us on YouTube, and follow us on Twitter. I'd also ask you to check out my other channel, that is Cody Carlson, PhD, where we talk about military history, books on history. I post some of my lectures on there. I would ask you to please check that out. Please subscribe. That would mean a lot to me. Also, we'd ask you to leave a thumb to this video on Board Game Geek. Now, if you are a fan of the channel and you like the content we bring you here, we would humbly ask you to go ahead and click on the Super Thanks button on this YouTube page and leave a tip. You know, ladies and gentlemen, I've got plenty of puns about noses, but I just can't pick one. Please somebody help me on my feet again, and I don't know where I'm going, and I don't know where I've been. Please somebody help me on the solid ground. It's a long time, and I'll be dying. Once a year I wind up in the band. 3 diet 6.